Welcome to the SIWIKE podcast, the only podcast that shares the stuff you didn't know you needed to know about jobs, careers, and life. The SIWIKE podcast, the stuff I wish I knew earlier.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the SIWIKE, the stuff I wish I knew earlier, the podcast. I'm your host, Lukey, and for today's topic, what I thought I'd dive into is the question on how do people deal with the question of what do you want to do with your life? And there's a couple of ways that I encourage them to think about is to understand that the nature of work is changing, first of all. When my grandparents were growing up, the notion of basically doing something for the next 40 years of your career, graduating at 22 and doing something until you're like 65 was pretty common, right? You would commit to a career, you would get a degree, and you'd basically do that for the rest of your life. You become like a doctor, a lawyer, accountant, engineer, and do that for 40 years. But understanding now, it's changing where people are shifting and moving in their career path and having more of a portfolio career where what they can potentially do is work in one area for, let's say, 10 years and another for another 10, another 7, another whatever. And by the end of their 40, 45-year career, they've done 10 different things, possibly in different jobs and possibly in even different career paths. If I take myself, for instance, I started off as a computer scientist, and then I moved more into the business side, doing management consulting. And now I'm in kind of education and psychology. And I still have probably a good 20 odd years left. And so how many more different things could I do? Could I go into, I don't know, something else? Not sure. What other things could I do? And then there's the other side. So if you take one as the doing one thing for your entire career path, and then there's another side of the spectrum where you're doing actually many things at the same time. So there's something called the gig economy. So having doing some freelancing and basically doing a bunch of things at the same time, where in the morning you might be doing some freelance graphic design and copywriting. In the daytime you might be doing some consulting and advisory, and then in the evenings you might be a chef and creating your YouTube channel on how to cook. So you could be doing all of those different things at the same time. And then there's every spectrum in between, and people could bounce back and forth where originally they might have thought they would have that kind of one and done career, then realize, you know what, I'm going to actually do multiple things. And then, you know what, I'm actually going to do multiple things at the same time. So realizing that you don't have to have that one thing and commit to it. So your purpose in life might not be to do one thing at this and only do that. It might actually be to grow and use kind of your foundational skills to help others. So a useful concept or useful exercise that I encourage you to do is the I want exercise. And what that is simply getting a piece of paper and literally write I want, and then whatever it is you want. And then do that as quickly as you can. I want whatever it is, I want whatever it is, and do that and write down 30 different things. And what you want could be anything. It could be a thing, it could be material possession, it could be a house, vacation, it could be whatever. I don't want to kind of plant seeds in there, but it could be anything. It could be an experience, it could be a skill, it could be an achievement, it could be any one of those things. So you don't restrict yourself to those material things, but what is it that you actually want? And some people are able to do it quite easily and well, and they'll have 5 pages of I wants and not be able to stop at 30. And for other people, they'll be challenged and not even be able to get past 10 of them. So thinking about how you do that. And if you're the type of person who actually is unable to come up with many of them, then try switching it to I wish. Because sometimes the I want word seems a little bit more like you're committing to something, but I wish is more aspirational, right? So try switching to I wish and see if you can kind of get your juices flowing and your inspiration there, and then switch it to I want. And for those people, the goal of it is not to commit and not to say that this is the one thing that I will only do. It's to allow yourself to dream, allow yourself to say, you know what, have I been limiting myself, and am I able to do more? And then what you'll want to do with that list for the I want list afterwards is to be able to prioritize them and categorize them. So start by categorizing them in personal and professional. Those are usually the two big goals. And then when personal, you could potentially do things like with health and relationships and spirituality, finances and things like that. And for professional, it could be things like your job. There's might be something with title. It might be learning. It might be some sort of achievements, or there could be all sorts of different ones. And it'll vary person to person, but categorize. And then your goal is to pick one in each that you want to do, or maybe a couple of them in each, and then pick that as your goal for the next year, next couple of months, and what have you. So that could be a useful concept. And another thing that might be interesting to keep in mind is the concept of the Ikigai, right? So this is a Japanese concept where you have 4 concentric circles. So think about 4 circles, 1, 2, 3, 4. And in the middle, the intersection point is that Ikigai. It's roughly translated to the reason why you wake up in the morning. In French, people call that the raison d'être, and in English, you probably call it your purpose. So what am I called to do? And doesn't mean that you have to focus on that, again, in that nature work, and you have to do it forever. It could move around because this is a moving target. But think about the 4 circles as what do you love to do, right? And oftentimes, if you start there, then it starts reinforcing itself. Because if you start with something that you don't like to do, then it gets harder and harder to do. So that's one circle. The second circle is what are you good at? Because oftentimes when you like doing something, you get better at it. But there are the things that no matter how long you spend, you just won't get good. And it's just something that you enjoy doing. Then the third circle is what does the world need? So what are some of the things that would help communities, the society as a whole, that would help individuals and people? And then the last circle is what the world will pay for, because sometimes the world puts value on different things at different points in time. So even though it's valuable to people, some people might not pay for it. Ask the people in the nonprofit and volunteer world. The world needs that, but unfortunately there's not a ton of money in that. So thinking about those 4 areas and seeing if that helps and influences your I want list. And that I want exercise, you could do that multiple times. You could do that every quarter, every year. And if it changes, that's actually okay. Because you can change and do different things as you go through your life. So thinking about that, and even having the intention of spending time on figuring out what it is that you want. So if we went back to that focus inspired approach, the first thing that we talk about is what is it that you want? So try to go through that exercise, spend a few minutes going through I want. If you can't do that, or you're not able to come up with enough of them, switch it to I wish, or spend some time thinking about those 4 concentric circles of the Ikigai and say, okay, out of all those, what could I do? And then once you have that prioritized list of things that you want, maybe pick the first starting point, or the top 5 or the top 10 or whatever, pick one and try to be specific about it. Make it into a SMART goal, right? And whether you like that goal setting mechanism, I think it's one of the simplest to follow, where make it specific. So if you want to be rich, well, what does that mean? Put a number to that. I want to have a bank account filled with $1 million, okay? Measurable. So $1 million, and in your bank account, you could actually see that. Attainable and realistic, usually it depends on the last one, which is time bound. So SMART is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. And the time bound, well, when do you want that? Within the year might be a little bit challenging. Within 10 years, that might be more interesting, because you could probably do that. And if you reverse engineered that, if you set $1 million in a bank account, then that means over the 10 years, you'd have to make $100,000. Well, you'd have to save $100,000, which means you'd probably have to make a little bit more. And then how does that work against your current salary, your current ways of making income? Could you actually achieve that? And then make it compelling. Actually plan and see yourself, okay, how could you make this? What would a life with that type of goal achieved be like? Or it could be a house, it could be a great job, it could be a great family, it could be a great whatever it is. So if it's a great job, what does that job look like? What does your office look like? Are you in an office? Are you outside of the office? Where's that office located? What sort of company it is? And the goal is for you to dream and envision that future. And the point is not to necessarily commit to that future and saying, this is the one and only thing that I will get and do. It's just understanding, well, if this is my goal, then I know what exactly it is, and then I can go after and get it. So that more compelling those goals and what you want is, the more likely that is you'll achieve it. So thinking about all those different things will be a starting point to getting towards what you want. So I encourage you to think about that, spend the time to actually think about what you want. And when you do that, you'll be a lot closer to reaching your career potential. So that's some SWIKE, the stuff I wish I knew earlier. And hopefully you'll enjoy that and join me for the next episode. Thanks a lot. Thanks for joining us on the SWIKE, Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. If you like the podcast, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you found this podcast. And if you can give us a review, that would be very appreciated. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn at Lukidanu, LUKIDANU, and the same on most social media platforms. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks. Bye.